And tonight on the Daily Wrap, President Obama standing by the Iran deal today as Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu continues to fight it. The FBI is now looking into Hillary Clinton's emails. Could she be indicted? And the first GOP debate is tomorrow night. Can Donald Trump be controlled? We've got all that plus your viewer comments. This is the Daily Wrap, live from New York City. Hi, everybody. I'm Joe Concha. Thank you for joining the Daily Wrap, joined by my co-host Rick Unger.
How are you today, Joe?
I'm great. I'm counting down the hours to the GOP debate.
I know.
Get your popcorn ready.
I hate to admit it, but I've never been this excited for a debate in my entire life.
Really?
It's going to be so much fun. I'm a little bummed out I'm not there. We couldn't do it this time. But I'm hearing from all my friends who were there in Cleveland, near my hometown of Youngstown.
Right.
And it's going to be a good night. It's going to be fun.
Wow. Will there be alcohol involved when you're watching?
There's always alcohol involved.
Okay.
I'm a journalist. I have a responsibility through the union.
That's true.
I have to drink.
I had no idea it was mandatory.
Of course.
Okay, to his right, assistant online editor and quite sober for Commentary Magazine, Noah Rothman joins us. Thank you, Noah. And finally, he's a public relations professional specializing in crisis communications, and we have a feeling he'll be quite busy after this show tonight. He also frequently appears on Fox News and MSNBC to contribute his insights to world affairs. He is Josh Nass.
Thanks for having me on, Joe.
Oh, thank you for being here on short notice, no less. Okay, everybody, let's get right to the Daily Download.
Just because Iranian hardliners chant death to America does not mean that that's what all Iranians believe. In fact, it's those hardliners who are most comfortable with the status quo. It's those hardliners chanting death to America who've been most opposed to the deal. They're making common cause with the Republican caucus.
Ruh-roh. That was American President Obama today trying to sell his deal with Iran during a speech at American University in Washington. During said speech, the president said Israel was wrong to oppose the deal. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu once again voiced his opposition.
The nuclear deal with Iran doesn't block Iran's path to the bomb. It actually paves Iran's path to the bomb. Worse, it gives Iran two paths to the bomb. Iran can get to the bomb by keeping the deal, or Iran could get to the bomb by violating the deal.
Okay, Rick Unger, do you agree with Bibi?
No, I actually don't. I mean, look, yeah, a lot of the criticism that I've heard since the speech today, which I have to tell you, I thought was a very interesting, very good speech. A lot of the criticism has been around the clip that we just showed. To me, that kind of, it brings up a few things. One, why do people get not particularly upset when Mike Huckabee says that Obama's marching Israelis to the oven, but they freak out when he says something like this? He strikes back. The president strikes back.
He's not the president.
Oh, so what? You know what? It's disingenuous. But more importantly, if this is what's being criticized, it means that people aren't finding things in the content of the speech, the real stuff, the stuff about the deal itself to criticize. What I'm kind of hoping for, seriously, because I thought he made an interesting case, I really want to hear the other side of the case. I really do. And I'm hoping that opponents will pick somebody who is knowledgeable. Not Bibi Netanyahu, because Bibi Netanyahu doesn't necessarily have my interest at heart as an American. I want somebody to give a speech now and make the case for the other side, legitimately.
But do you think that was the time to have a pot shot against Republicans, comparing it against people who are chanting death to America? Isn't that
let's talk about the deal.
Unpresidential?
Yeah, again, deflection.
I get it, but he created the deflection. I'm not.
People say bad things about him every minute of the day, and it's like, so if he takes a political shot every now and then, it's the end of the world. You can do that if you want, but people who are paying attention go, yeah. Talk to me about the deal. Talk to me about what he said and why you disagree with what he said about the deal.
Okay, Noah?
I'm not surprised that the speech resonated with you because he was speaking exclusively to liberals. There was no substance in that speech. That was part of the design, because it has been pretty effective, the opposition, in creating a lot of tension about this deal, particularly in Congress, where he needs a lot of support. Yeah. If you've been seeing the polls, they're not going in the right direction.
There was no substance in the deal?
There was no substance in his speech,
speech.
Which is why he created this deflection. It was very intentional. I reject his premise that there are supposedly somehow hardliners and moderates in this organization. It really reflects a lack of understanding about what the theocracy in Tehran is about. This isn't a republic insofar as we understand it. Of course there are. They're in the theocracy. What we have is a fiction, a semblance of a republic. But
that was his point, though. His point was Iranian people do not necessarily share that belief.
Right.
It's the hardliners in the theocracy. You're absolutely right. In that feel
guys,
that way.
We do have another guest, by the way, Josh. I want to get your thoughts on it in a moment.
Don't worry, I'm not particularly
So let's bring in Fred Fleitz. He is the Senior Vice President for Policy and Programs with the Center for Security Policy. Mr. Fleitz has over 25 years' experience working with the CIA, Defense Intelligence Agency, and the State Department. Quite a resume. Welcome, Fred.
Good to be here.
So what do you make of the President's speech today? Probably a slightly different take than Mr. Unger.
Well, these hardliners are the regime. The supreme leader who approved this deal, he's saying death to America. These aren't hardliners who are not part of the negotiating team. But my problem with trying to associate Republicans with these so-called hardliners in Iran, it's not just Republicans who are against this deal. There are an increasing number of Democrats who are against this deal. Brad Sherman, Elliot Engel, Ted Deutsch, and I could list a whole bunch more. Brad Sherman said recently that this deal amounts to terrorism with impunity. And he wants to kill this deal because he thinks it is not morally or legally binding on the United States. What the president said was extremely misleading.
Well, Fred, it's Rick Unger. I was kind of with you all the way there until you got to the last appointment. I watched the speech twice now, and I don't know what was misleading. One thing I can't help but notice is that every Democratic congressman you just mentioned has a large Jewish contingency within their districts. It can't be that shocking that even though they're Democrats, they might take a dim view. My question to you is, when it's all said and done, what do you think is going to happen? I think we'd agree that Congress is not going to support the deal at the outset, but will they have enough votes to overcome a veto?
I think there's a strong chance this deal will be rejected, and probably by a veto-proof majority, because of the issues no one's talking about. This deal lifts sanctions against Iranian terrorists. Qasem Soleimani, who provided weapons that killed Americans in Iraq, and Ahmad Valadi, who was responsible for the bombing of the Jewish Community Center in Argentina in 1994. We can argue about whether this stops the Iranian nuclear program. I'm sure it doesn't. But I got to tell you, a lot of members of Congress are not going to vote for a deal that lifts sanctions on Iranian terrorists who killed Jews in Argentina and Americans in Iraq.
So, Fred, let's say you're right, and in fact there are enough votes to overcome a veto, and I think you could be right. That could happen. What happens then?
There's this myth that the alternative to this deal is war. No. The status quo is infinitely better than this terrible deal that legitimizes Iran's nuclear program. American sanctions will stay in place, and we will get a new Republican president in 2017 who will negotiate a responsible plan to roll back Iran's nuclear program and to force it to behave itself and stop sponsoring terrorism.
And if you don't get a Republican president in 2017?
I think it's going to be a catastrophe for our country.
Fred Fleitz, we're going to have to leave it there. Well, we appreciate your input. Thanks so much for joining us today.
Great to be here.
Okay, Josh, let's get you in.
I want to push back on a number of things Rick said.
Okay.
Firstly, Mike Huckabee was right in his comment.
No, he wasn't.
This idea that we all ought to be living in an alternate universe. President Obama lives in an alternate universe, right? We're not supposed to take the Iranian regime and the Ayatollah at face value when they say death to America, death to Israel, death to the Jews. That's exactly what they're saying.
By the way, for 40 years.
Right, but they haven't had the nuclear capacity to actually execute on that.
Well, and if we don't come to some arrangement or blow them up,
this is the part that I don't understand. What's your position? Is it that they don't believe what they're saying and they're just saying it for fun?
No, I think as Noah said, the theocracy there very much believes it. They are absolutely hardliners. But my position is this. Ultimately, I suspect we are going to have to go to war in Iran. I do believe, however, that you do everything you can to try and avoid it so our guys aren't getting killed. If it doesn't work, if they cheat, if they keep building a bomb, blow them up. But be honest about it.
Okay.
And this deal is good because it legitimizes
It's a
them
start.
having big mouths.
Okay, we'll have to end it there. Good debate, boys. So let us know what you thought about President Obama's speech today. Go to newsmaxtv.com/comments and let us know. Coming up, the FBI is looking into the security of Hillary Clinton's private email setup. We've got that for you next. Stay tuned.